Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon as well for the other participants joined across the globe. Welcome, everyone, to the webinar India Energy Policy and Major Market Players, being jointly organized by NEDO and Grant Thornton. So we will be having this webinar with the opening remark from Mr. Masafumi Senda, who is the Chief Representative NEDO from India office, followed by a couple of sessions, and we'll be having a closing remark. Now I request Mr. Masafumi Senda to have a welcome and opening remark. Over to you, Mr. Senda. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So, distinguished speakers and participants, I am, as introduced, Masafumi Senda, Chief Representative of NEDO New Delhi office. I am very happy to make opening remarks in this webinar. The name is India Energy Policy and Major Market Players, with support from Grant Thornton Bharat. At the outset, I would like briefly introduce NEDO. NEDO stands for New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization. NEDO is a government agency under Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Government of Japan. The objective of NEDO is to research, development, and demonstration of new technology with the aim of improving Japan's global competitiveness and addressing decarbonization in the world. So NEDO New Delhi office covers our activities in South Asia and Middle East. And talking about activities in India, NEDO has implemented 13 demonstration projects in the field of decarbonization, such as smart grid, solar power generation with microgrid system, energy storage, green telecom towers, green hospitals, and energy efficiency in steel and cement sector. In addition, as for demonstration project, Nissin Electric, with support of NEDO, has been preparing technological demonstration of micro substation for electrification using transformer for large capacity instrument. At present, we have been supporting feasibility study such as ammonia co-firing at existing coal-fired power plants, hydrogen technology to decarbonize an automobile factory, biogas project, and waste-to-energy project. This fiscal year, we commissioned Grant Thornton Bharat to conduct research on the topic of India energy policy and major market players. We would like to discuss the outcome of the report through this webinar. And we intended to bring stakeholders from government and industry to discuss on this report, and I would like you to present your views on the current energy scenario in India. Lastly, let me inform that World Expo 2025 will start in Osaka, Japan next month. The result of NEDO-supported research and development will be on full display at the Expo 2025. Therefore, I'd like all of you to try out the latest technology and stop by NEDO events. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers for joining us in today's webinar, in spite of your busy schedule. We are hopeful that today's discussion will deepen our knowledge about India energy policy and market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senda-san, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this. Mr. Senda has given a brief about what is the objective of this and what is happening in Japan. Now it's my pleasure to welcome you all for this webinar on India energy policy and major market players. My name is Amit Kumar, and I'm a partner in Grant Thornton. And our team has executed this study successfully, which we'll be presenting today. Now, this study, as Mr. Senda mentioned, is funded by NEDO, and it provides an in-depth analysis of India's energy landscape from 2024 to 2070. Now, as we all know that energy supply and demand targets in India till 2030 are well documented. CEA, various ministries, government departments, Niti Aayog have projected, the energy and supply demands scenarios. However, since Government of India announced that 2047, which is 100 years after independence of the country, and the country has an ambition to become a developed one. So we have taken that as a target year, and 2070, because 2070 is where India has an ambitious target to achieve net zero. So 2047, 2030, 2047, and 2070, that were the 3 years as to what will be the energy scenario. That has been the crux of the study, that in terms of data and figures. However, that's not in itself the complete one, because we are also focusing on several key areas. Example, what is the present energy mix? What is the demand and supply position? Future and the decarbonization pathways, because we have very ambitious target of 500 gigawatt, as we all know, till 2030 for renewables. And if you include the green hydrogen, then it becomes 625, because 125 gigawatt will be required for green hydrogen. But we are not just focusing only on electricity. This is an energy study. So we are focusing on coal, various fossil fuels, including petroleum, because that is in itself is quite a substantial part of it. It's a different matter that just like Europe and Japan and some of the developed economies, what we have seen, that there is a trend for electrification, and electrification also from renewable sources, because then it itself becomes the pathway for decarbonization or the net zero roadmap. So we'll touch upon that aspect as well. Now, again, one of the critical aspect is the emphasis on India's energy transition model, because every country, depending on the resources they have indigenously or they import, that is has a hand in developing that model for energy transition, and that model in itself will outline the pathways for achieving this net zero emission target of 2070. Now, this will obviously include integration of RE, renewable energy, I mean, advancement in energy efficiency in true sense, because now we are also touching on the process side of the energy efficiency, not just the utilities in itself. And very importantly, adoption of some of the emerging technologies. These are green hydrogen and very importantly, CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, storage. IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, with support from ADB, is working on one of the CCUS study in Assam for IOC, and Grant Thornton, we are also supporting in that study. Now, our finding highlight the importance of collaboration with three stakeholders, between three stakeholders, policymakers, very important one. That's why you will find that they are here today to discuss some of the aspects related to this. Industry leaders, so we have invited industry in the panel today, and also the technology providers. Technology providers, not just with those who are present in India, but globally, because many of the state-of-the-art technology innovation are happening overseas in batteries, in green hydrogen, Japan, UK, Europe, US, Australia, and also critical minerals. So all these things put together, we have compiled this report, which will be available in the public domain very soon. But today you will hear as to what are the findings and the recommendations going forward, which I'm sure that the government and the industry will take a cue from, and would help in implementing these. With this, I would like to invite my colleague Ilamati Raja, Director Grant Thornton, to present you the glimpses of this study. Ilamati Raja, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh Kumar, for setting the stage of our study. My name is Ilamati, Director at Grant Thornton Bharat. So now let us delve into the key findings and the recommendation of our assessment of India energy markets. and we will be exploring the various energy transition model the country is expected to adapt across the supply as well as the demand markets, and the role of different energy sources and the outlook of the supply and the demand markets. So let us get into the presentation. Right. Full screen, please. Please put it on the full screen. Yeah, thank you. Uh, next, next slide. Right. So the agenda for the webinar, previous one. Right. So we have a three web agenda for today's to cover. One is to to discuss about what is this assessment covers. Two, the key insights what we have assessed out of this study. The third one is the India's energy landscape, which is a detailed version to say how the energy markets in India is expected to transform from 2024 to 2070. And the fourth one is the key recommendation, which more revolves around in order to achieve the energy transition, the country has to move toward. So, what are the things to be addressed? So, that's we have presented in the form of the key recommendation. Let's go to the first coverage, which is the content of the webinar or the coverage what we have covered in the study. So this whole assessment is about the India energy landscape from 2024 to 2070, where we have touched upon the energy mix, the demand market, supply market, and how this both market is expected to evolve in the future, and who are all the energy players who will have a key role in transforming the India's energy journey, plus what are all the policy changes which is expected in the country from the prevailing policy and program setup we are having that will drive towards the energy transition or towards the net zero for the year 2070. While the assessment is it's covered about the entire value chain of the energy sector, for this webinar, we are touching about the three key focus area, which covers the present energy mix and demand supply position of India. Second, we will also be touching about the future energy demand and supply position in India, right from 2030, what we can expect in 2047, as well as in 2070 in a net zero scenario. Third, what the major energy users in India are planning for their energy transition and their decarbonization pathways. So this gives the entire gambit of the transition as a country, which is uh, taking the action towards reaching the goal of net zero. Next, please. Right. To start with, we need to see at as a country, India, how the energy supply and demand is looking at. If we see the supply, the country is predominantly relying upon six primary energy sources, which includes coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, hydro, and renewable energy. And this constitutes the energy supply of about 847 MTOE of energy for the year FY23. And out of this 843 MTOE, the 59% or the majority of the share is being supplied by the coal, and followed by the crude oil, which is about 29% of the country's energy supply has been fulfilled by the crude oil, and subsequently followed by the gas, which is at 7%, hydro at 2%, renewable energy share at 2%, and nuclear at 1%. While 847 MTOE is on the supply side, the country is having the demand of 553 MTOE. And if we look closely, this 553 MTOE, the major share or the major demand is coming from the industries, number one, which is having the share of 43%, and two, the domestic segment, which is having the share of 10%, followed by the commercial at 2%, agriculture 4, transport 8%, and others 31%. So the others is not only for the energy use, it's for the non-energy use like the fertilizer applications and others. So now, if we see for the energy demand of 553, the country is having the primary energy resource consumption of about, or the supply of about 847 MTOE, which is about roughly a 65% conversion. Or the other way to look at is there is a efficiency or loss of 35% being observed across the various systems. When we take the coal, yes, 70% of the coal is being used for the power generation, and the remaining 30% is used by the industries like steel, cement, and others for the thermal application or for their captive power plant production or heat production. In the similar way, if we take the crude oil, the crude is also being converted into the various petroleum products being used majorly for the energy use and transportation as well as for the industry purpose. So in this whole conversion process, as a country, there is a loss of about 35% currently the country is experiencing that give us an opportunity to redefine the energy system that operates efficiently. Plus we can also look at what is the best way the energy can be used, or the alternate fuels can be used the efficiency, so that the energy usage has been efficiently consumed across various end users. Now if we again look at broadly that 553 MTOE, the demand the country is having, about 70% of this demand is required or is coming from the thermal usage. That comes under the industrial use, transportation, and others. And only the 30% of this is required in the form of the electrical. Now, with this background, we have assessed, what is the outlook for the country? Are we going to stay in the same proposition in future, or is there any change expected in the thermal mix as well as the energy, the electrical mix, and how it's going to evolve from right now 2025 till 2030 and 47 and 2070? Next slide, please. So this, this slide as well as the next slide will give us the findings of our assessment. Now we have seen in the previous slide that about 69% of the energy demand is or the supply is being given supplied or addressed by the coal. So if you look at the coal market, which broadly includes the coal, coking coal, lignite, at 2024, in 2024, the demand for this segment is about 461 million tons. And this demand of 461 MT is expected to reach 537 million tons by 2030, which is the period where it is likely to get peaked. And from 2030 or from 2035 onwards, it is expected that the demand for or the demand for the coal, coking coal, and lignite is expected to decline as we move towards the net zero or the decarbonization pathway by various stakeholders. So by 2047, there is a 24% reduction from 2030 is expected in the absolute demand. And by 2070, there will be no consumption of these fuels in the end users who are currently consuming this fuel source. They would have been shifted to the other fuel, or the purpose of the coal being used for power generation will be replaced with the alternative sources. Hence, by 2070, we expected it to decline to the near zero. Next, the crude oil, which is supplying about 29% of the energy supply for the India. If we look currently in 2024, we are having the crude oil demand of about 263 million tons. Out of 263 million tons, we are depending heavily on the import. The country is 89% of the crude is being imported, and only 11% is produced domestically. Now, by 2030, the 263 million ton is marginally expected to increase to 264 million tons. And beyond 2030, there is a uh, decline in demand is expected because of the decarbonization journey, and likely to drop by 20% between 2030 to 47. And between 2047 to 2070, it is further expected to drop by another 90 to 20%. So that is on the crude oil demand. Now, while that is on the input side, if we look at the byproducts of the refined petroleum, next please, which covers the refined petroleum would include diesel, petrol, and LPG. In 2024, we have the diesel demand of 61 million tons, and the petrol demand is 21 million tons, and LPG demand is 29 million tons. By 2030, all these three segments is expected to decline on account of shifting of this fuel usage to the alternate sources like electric vehicle or the gas-based transportation or the electrification of the major transportation and the heating purpose. So as a result, we see a trend of declining in 2030 in the next 5 years itself. However, within next 20 years, by 2047, the two fuel segments, particularly the diesel and petrol, is expected to reach zero. and LPG consumption will decline, but the demand for LPG is expected to exist till 2070, but in the trend of declining in nature or reduction in the nature. So while we are presenting the expected or the outlook for these energy markets, the reason for or the drivers for the growth or the decline will be subsequently discussed. Uh, in continuation, if we look at the natural gas, the country is having the demand of 68 BCM in 2024, and out of the 68 BCM, we are roughly about 47% we are importing, and the rest is the domestic production. And we do foresee that the trend of 47 to roughly a 50% import is likely to get continued till 2070. However, the demand of natural gas is expected to drastically increase from 2024 to 30, 47, and 2070 as a result of the gas-based economy being promoted in the industrial use and transportation. Go next. The other market or the emerging market is the aviation turbine fuel. Now, as the economy grows, we see a clear trend for the accelerated demand for the ATF, given the push for bringing the sustainability in the aviation sector, already the Western country markets are adapting the sustainable aviation fuels. And in India, we do have a program to have a SAF blending from 2028 onwards. So with that trend, we clearly see the demand for ATF is expected to increase from 2024 and going forward. But beyond 2035, the blending of SAF into the ATF is expected to chip in as a market acceleration in India within the domestic market itself. And by around 2047, it is expected that about 30% of the ATF will be substituted with the sustainable aviation fuel. And by 2070, it is expected that 50% of the aviation turbine fuel demand will be met through the SAF. Next, please. The next market we will be seeing is the green hydrogen. So green hydrogen, if we look, as of India, as of now in 2025, we have a latent demand in India. So we have the demand emerging from majorly four sectors, namely refineries, fertilizers, steel, and the transportation purpose. Given the cost effectiveness we are yet to achieve and the demand for domestic market to pick up, the market is primarily focusing on exporting to the Western as well as the Far East market at moment in India. However, the market for green hydrogen production as well as the electrolyzer production is expected to get well settled or established from 2028 to 30 in the country. And from 2030 onwards, the demand within the country from the key markets is expected to gain momentum. So with that, we see the demand of about roughly a 30 MMTPA by 2050, and is majorly going to be driven by the four segments, particularly the heavy-duty vehicles, steel, refinery, and the fertilizer that will be used for the ammonia production. Next, please. While so far we covered about the thermal side of the energy, both the supply and demand. Now we will be looking at the 30% of the energy use the country is having, which is the electricity. Now, if we look at the electricity demand outlook for the country, as on today, we are India is having the demand of about 1,543 terawatt hours. Now, this demand is expected to increase by 1.6x by 2030 in next 5 years. And between 2030 to 2047, in the 17 years, the country is expected to have a accelerated consumption of electricity. So the demand is expected to grow in 3x between 2030 and 47. And between 47 to 70, we are expecting there would be a moderation in the electricity consumption as a result of more maturing towards the most of the industrial, commercial, and other markets. Hence, there would be a moderation effect will be there. But in absolute term, we see that as we currently there in 1,543 terawatt hour, we are about to reach 13,514 terawatt hour by 2070, which is almost a 10x growth from 2024 or where we are standing as on today. Now, given the the faster pace at which the electricity demand is expected to grow, we do see that the installed capacity is also going to keep the same pace in meeting the demand. Next, please. So this graph says about the expected installed capacity from various energy sources to meet the growing electricity demand in India. If we see in FY24, we are having, or towards the end of FY25, we are having the total installed capacity of about 440 gigawatt, out of which roughly about 200 we are, or 210 we are having from the renewables, and 243 we are having from the thermal. And going forward, the trend we see that renewable energy is going to have a higher share, but that is likely to have a moderate pace of increasing till 2035, and there onwards, with the streamlining of the key issues or the key concern areas like connectivity, land is getting sorted out. We see that by FY47, a significant portion of the installed capacity is about more than 80%, or about 80% is going to be contributed by the renewable. And by FY70, almost 90% is likely to come from the renewable, and the rest is from the hydro, nuclear, and insignificant portions from the coal to handle the baseload requirement. While this is on the installed capacity, the expected energy generation from this energy mix is also going to keep the same pace. As on today, we are having the energy generation from the thermal at the higher side to closer to 50% and above. Now that is expected to keep reducing going forward, and we see that the energy generation from renewable is going to take a pace, and the generation also will have the growth rate of 2x between FY30 to FY70 for every 15 years. Right. So while now we've seen about how the thermal energy market is getting expected to evolve in the India, and also we have seen about the electricity market. Now we will get into a deeper insights on how this market is going to evolve, and what are the reasons or the drivers which are pushing this expected changes. To start with, if you look at the demand, like I said earlier, we are currently around 1,500 terawatt hour, and by 2030 we are expected to reach around 2,500, and by 2047 8,400, and by 2070 13,500. 8,400, just for the imagination purpose, this is the level at which currently the US market is consuming. So if we look closer in our energy mix or the electricity demand, the industrial segment or the market is consuming about 42% as on today, and followed by the domestic, which is 24, and then the commercial. And we see a trend that this energy mix or the consumption from this various market likely to continue in the same share, as the growth from each of these segment is expected to have a kind of a equal pace right from 2025 till 2070. So as a result, if we say the industry consumption of electricity is staying at 42% as on today, is expected to grow at 43 by 2030, 49% by 2047, and a 50% by 2070. So there is an incremental increase in the share. However, that is a marginal increase. The other segment is also keeping the same pace. So the more or less the energy mix likely to continue in the same fashion. And if you look at the per capita consumption also, currently we are having the per capita consumption of 1,300 units per capita per annum, which is likely to reach around 8,000 by 2070. Now, what is the demand drivers for this energy demand, for this electricity consumption? The more shift towards the manufacturing trend, which we are clearly observing in India at this point of time, is likely to get accelerated in the next decade and thereafter, which will drive the electricity demand in the industrial segment, followed by the rising per capita income in the domestic segment, will keep the pace of consumption by the domestic market, so in a higher rate. And the emergence of the service-oriented economic activity in India, like data centers, GCCs, and others, will also result in the increase in electricity consumption by the commercial sector. So all these three sector is expected to having the growth rate or a kind of increasing trend. Whereas when it comes to the agriculture, we see that with more precision farming and advanced technology being going to be adapted in agriculture, so the electricity consumption from agriculture is expected to be getting reduced. Next, please. While that's on the demand, if we look at the supply side, so as on today, we have having a significant reliance on the thermal assets for meeting the base load. We are having the installed capacity of about 210 gigawatt in FY24. And we see that this installed capacity is likely to reach the peak capacity of 280 by FY35, and thereafter the installed capacity of thermal assets is expected to decline on account of two reasons. One, the most of the base load requirement will be more shifted towards the renewable, as we see a clear trend in renewable that the new product like such as FDRE, the peak hybrid and the likes is slowly shifting away the base load from thermal to the renewable energy. Number one. Number two, the retirement of the older units would result in the decline of the capacities. Third, we also see a trend that the nuclear is likely to take up uh, uh, pace in the coming decade. So, which will also absorb some of the baseload burden from the thermal. As a result, a declining trend is expected from FY35 till FY70. So, towards FY70, the expected capacity from the thermal would be somewhere around close to 10 gigawatts. And coming to the nuclear market, as on today or in the last almost 10 years, we are having almost a flat trend in terms of the capacity addition. So we are having about 8 gigawatt of nuclear capacity in FY25. However, with the recent amendment in the policy environment in India, which allows the private sector for getting into the design, implementation, construction, and operation, so it is expected that by FY32, the country is likely to have a nuclear capacity of about 22 gigawatt, and by 47, 100 gigawatt, and by FY70, doubling to 200 gigawatt. Further, in the current budget, the government of India has allocated about 2.3 billion USD for having R&D in a small modular reactor, and also targeting to have at least 5 SMRs by 2033. So, as a result of which, nuclear is going to act as a transition system as a to absorb the requirement of the meeting the base load from thermal to the renewable energy. Go next. Now, this slide speaks about the renewable energy outlook. As I said earlier, now the renewable is going to play a key role in meeting the energy demand for the country that would take care of both base load as well as the peak load. Now we clearly see a trend in India that the last decade was purely thermal, which keeps the assets on for meeting the base load as well as the peak load. Now, in the current decade, the clear trend emerging from the renewable is that the product like FDRE, hybrids, and so on is now slowly replacing the coal in meeting the base load as well as the peak requirement. So the renewable will likely to pick up the the responsibility or a significant role in meeting the base load from the next decade onwards, as the market evolves, expected to evolve in the current market, current decade. From the next decade, it is more towards replacing the coal with the renewable.